We have a list of 5 questions for each firm. The first 4 questions are identical. The last question is one specific to that firm based on information that was provided in their package. So we can do it any way if it's okay with people. I mean, I can simply ask all the questions. If people would prefer to ask questions themselves, they can do that. But is it okay if I do the questions?
I think it's a great idea.
Okay.
I agree, Alan. One question
Yeah.
to you. Are we, the committee members, allowed to do follow-ups in this, or do we, is it just?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Yeah. Keep in mind, though, that, you know, we have 5 questions. The interviews are a half hour, so we'll have to get it done during that period.
Okay.
So after each interview, there's going to be a space of about 10-15 minutes until the next one. I suggest that people start, scoring the interview form for that particular firm. We're going to wait until we finish all of them before we discuss our numbers, but I think that's probably the best use of our time. So I've got a couple of minutes before we're ready to begin. Anything further? Kathy, you have anything further?
No, I think that it spells it out just so that you realize that we are going to post this as well, this video, on our webpage so that it is open to the public. And that the other thing is any comments that you write down, any information that you write down, notes, they become public information. So you want to make sure that anything you write down comes after the fact so that we can put that in the file. And then after all of this has happened, when we go to assign the points and then do the ranking, I can take care of that at the end. But for the most part, I'm here simply to just make sure that you're following the procurement law so that when we go to submit everything to the MSBA, we've done everything the way that they want them to.
Okay. All right, couple minutes and we'll be ready to go. First firm will be CBRE Heery, followed by Compass, then PMA. Compass will be 4:15, PMA will be 5 o'clock. After that point, we will rank, we'll rate everyone, we'll rank them according to our ratings and make a preliminary decision. So we have a lot of work to do tonight, but I think we can get it done. And with that, anything by anybody? Okay. Got a couple of minutes. If the Heery people are here, maybe we can at least do some introductions and get that out of the way. Do we have people here from CBRE Heery?
Yes, this is Tom Ellis, and we have 3 other individuals with us today: Dennis Pasidi, Marwan Albi Elias, and Matt McCafferty. So you can see those 3 individuals there.
Okay.
And I guess the other question I have is, do you need to do a roll call so we know who's on the committee and who's observers?
We will do that. Tom, could you list those people again?
Sure. I'm Tom Ellis.
Yeah.
Matt McCafferty is.
Okay.
Matt, can you wave your hand there?
Okay.
And then Marwan Albi Elias, and Dennis Pasidi.
Okay. How is Marwan's last name spelled? Because I don't have them on my screen.
It's ABI-ELIAS.
Yes.
Okay.
So
And
he's actually a Norwood resident. So he's.
oh, okay. Dennis. All right. Why don't we do a roll call of people here? I'm Allan Slater. I'm chairman of the committee. I'm also a member of the Finance Commission.
I'm Margaret Fraser. I'm the principal of the Coakley Middle School.
Paul Riccati, Director of Buildings and Grounds, Norwood Public Schools.
Tom Maloney, member of the Norwood Board of Selectmen.
And we also have Tony Mizuko, who is our town manager.
Okay. And we have a caller one and a couple other people. Are they going to identify themselves or?
Yeah, I'm Joe Collins. I work with the town. I'm just providing some technical support.
Okay, thank you.
I'm Kathy Carney. I'm the contract administrator for the town of Norwood.
Okay. Thank you. So,
Okay. It's almost 3:30. I don't see a problem with beginning maybe 2 minutes early. That okay with everyone?
sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Again, our interview right now is with CBRE Heary. Interview will be a period of a half an hour. The format is Heary will give a statement, and then I will ask questions. People are free to follow up on these questions, and then we'll have a closing where Heary can ask questions and make a final statement. So with that, CBRE Heary, the floor is yours.
Okay. Our understanding is it was 10 minutes, or what type of time frame for our opening statement or whatever you're looking for?
Excuse me, time frame, whatever you'd like. I mean, it's a half hour interview, so 5 minutes maybe at the most.
Sure, but we'll keep it quick. We understood it was 10 minutes, but can I share my screen as part of this process, or?
We weren't planning, Kathy, as I recall, we weren't planning to have any presentation.
That's correct. We had asked that all of the presenters please not bring any slides or presentations. Instead, we've got everything that we felt we needed in your RFS proposals. So instead, we'd rather just have you talk and then have our questions asked rather than have any presentations.
Okay. Okay. Well, I will move forward quickly with kind of the overview that we were trying to emphasize. Obviously the proposals showed, our firm and our staff and who we had. First of all, I'd like to first say Mark Lydon, who is our project director, unfortunately had an emergency health situation, so he is not part of this presentation, which is unfortunate. So I've stepped in and asked Dennis Basidi, who was the on-site project manager for the Beverly Middle School, to step in and provide support on that. Since I was the project director or managing director on that project, I believe we'll be able to cover the scope of work. But
please wish Mark well for us.
I will. Yes, it's one of those situations that an hour ago the situation was different, but I think as we've learned in this COVID-19 environment, you have to kind of be fluid and address the situation and go from there. So anyway. So the 5 things I think that we wanted to emphasize is why we think we're the right OPM for Norwood is the exceptional and qualified team leadership that we have, outstanding performance on our prior projects, how we focus on client value, and leveraging the strength of our company in a lot of ways beyond the baselines that is required for the scope of work in the MSBA OPM scope of services. Mark Lydon is a CCM, which is a certified construction manager. That's kind of the gold standard in terms of credentials for people who have had in-charge leadership of projects over an extended period of time, that they're not just having worked in the industry for 20 or 30 years. And there are a lot of people out there that hang out their shingles and say they're an OPM, when in fact having in-charge expertise and experience and credentials showing that, whether it's continuing to have certification. Mark started off his career as a facility manager, and so he has a special focus on how to work with clients and help them use their building when they're done. This isn't just us here keeping the project on schedule, on budget. It's helping you make good decisions along the way for the 50-year plus lifespan of your building as the project continues on. So, we've got people from, Marwan, who is from Norwood, who's a licensed construction supervisor, and Matt McCafferty, who are the construction field team, who really focus on quality control. So, you get what you paid for, and we're working with you to be able to turn your building over and have a good functional building when the project's done. Outstanding performance. The team is, our team's been recognized by our peers, the Construction Management Association of America New England chapter 5 times over the last decade for exceptional project management leadership. The Beverly Middle School received the 2019 Project Achievement Award by our peers for, the design is phenomenal. The facility itself is phenomenal, but it's the process that is used. So, and then as we go through the relevant experiences we talked about is the Beverly Middle School. We really focus on client value. We know we're helping you build a new building to improve the teaching and learning environment of your students, focusing on the quality of the experience, indoor air quality, material selection, first cost versus life cycle cost to give you the best value, and being able to manage your project when you're done. So, the size of our company, Heary was purchased by CBRE about 2.5 years ago. Heary's been doing project management for over 60 years, primarily in the K-12 market up in New England. So we really know schools. But the CBRE acquisition has given us a lot of depth of resources and breadth of market sector resources that really help owners help manage their facilities better. We use move management on the Beverly Middle School. We help the district really understand how to transition from their 5th grades to integrate them into the 5 through 8 middle school. And that was no small feat, and it took a lot of effort and planning. So that's important. And then the last item is industry leadership. We're active. Our firm is active leadership in local and national industry organizations. We have industry recognized certified staff credentials, and we really contribute to the leadership of the local organizations and national organizations from that perspective. So anyway, so that's something that we think was not specifically in our proposal, but we think highlights the 5 key things about our differentiators of our firm. So.
Okay, thank you. Just quick question, Tom. In the mid-'70s, were you ever known as Heary Associates?
Yes, it was Heary and Heary Associates, Heary Program Management. Yes, they were. Okay,
because I dealt with you guys way back in the mid-'70s, so good experience.
Yes.
Let me ask some questions. There's going to be 5 questions. The first question is, can you discuss the advantages of the CM at risk methodology over the design, bid, build approach and vice versa? And can you tell us if you have a preference for the Coakley project?
Okay, well, I think we've worked on, I think we're on our 7th CM at risk project. And for, the prior 15 years, primarily just did straight design, bid, build projects under Chapter 149. So we have seen significant advantages for cooperation, coordination, engagement of the CM at-risk firms into the design process. And so we see significant advantages to the owner for engaging them, especially when you're doing projects that need a lot of phasing and or logistics work. Matt and Marwan and Dennis are all working right now on CM at risk projects. Matt and Marwan are working on Worcester South, which is a very challenging logistics plan, which is building a new building right next to the existing building. So there are a lot of issues there that you can plan with the CM on board early on. We advocate for getting the CM on board before the schematic design budget is established, so that they buy into the budget and own the budget. They're required to be on board prior to the start of the design development phase, but we've been pushing our owners and suggesting that there's significant advantage to get them on board early. So that's what we focus on. So we see significant advantages of cooperation and collaboration, and being able to have much smoother and better results in the end of the day. You know, there are some projects, if you get the right builders, that can go smoothly. It's all about getting the right team and having the right team that works together. So.
Okay. Do you feel that there's any, at this point, you know, you may not be able to answer, do you think there's a preference for the Coakley project, whether to go the conventional route as opposed to Sam at risk?
Well, I think that the site that you have has got a lot of logistics that are going to need to be coordinated and planned, and it's very difficult to do that in a design phase and put it in a plan and then have everyone bid on it. So I think, you know, at the end of the day, it's important to be able to work together on the project together and do that.
Okay. Any other questions from other members? Okay. Let me go to the next question, if I could. If you are selected as the OPM for this project, can you tell us your view on how long you will be engaged with the town on the project? Essentially, when would your involvement and responsibility end?
Well, we like to say we never go away. We're always available to our clients at the end of the day. Because, you know, our reputation is everything in this industry. It's not just standing beside your client during the design process and during the construction. It's being there after it's all done and helping manage the project, whether it's a year or 2 years or 5 years after the project's over. We're available to work with the team, and we like to, you know, 80% or more of our business is repeat work with clients, and in the public sector, that's a pretty strong statement that, you know, we work with clients and stand by them. So, you know, the MSBA anticipates that a lot of these projects are 8 years from beginning to final closeout and then some. You know, hopefully we try to move that forward. And like in the Beverly project, we got the school open a year ahead of the what the city originally thought they were going to be able to do to get the students in the school due to the overcrowding. So we'll do everything we can to move the project forward and accelerate it where it makes sense. But you know, we stand by and with our clients well beyond the end of substantial completion and the 1-year warranty and closeout process.
Okay. Any further questions from anyone? Any follow-ups? Okay. One of the project objectives is sustainability, particularly the any CHIPS criteria and LEED. Please include examples of opportunities and strategies that you would pursue for Norwood.
Okay. Well, I just renewed my LEED credentials this last weekend, so I spent a fair amount of time focusing on the material selection part, because I feel that's a really important piece. You know, the LEED opportunity in a lot of communities is, let's get silver and let's get the 2% reimbursement from the MSBA, and that's our goal. And yes, we're going to be trying to make our buildings more energy efficient and usage, and be able to be energy efficient and use the building more efficiently due to those requirements of LEED. But I look at this, and I think we look at this as working with our clients to build a healthy building. And you know, to me, that's the most important thing. You're putting together a brand new building for, you know, middle schoolers and teachers. So you're building a brand new building, and then one of the first things that LEED allows you to do is when the building's done and you're ready to open the building, you have to flush it out for 2 weeks, which means you're getting off-gassing of all the products that were either put in during the construction phase or during the FF&E phase. So, you know, our goal is to work together with you, the owner, and help make better decisions, you know, using environmental declaration forms that are part of the LEED process to really understand what are you putting in that building, you know, in terms of being able to make good decisions. The one thing we see right now is that there are significant amounts of better products out there that are more environmentally friendly and sustainable, but also 2 or more are better for a healthy building. Harvard's been leading a really good initiative where they're basically trying to and work with the manufacturers to identify better products to go into buildings, so you basically do not have to have that process working out. And actually, we've been working with MSBA and our furniture advisory group to work with them to help identify where we can improve the purchasing and acquisition of furnishings as you go through, so you can minimize it as the project is completed.
Okay. Good. Okay. Just give me a second to write something down.
Alan, could I follow up briefly?
Absolutely, yes.
Mr. Ellis, this might actually go back to the first question better, but one interesting passage in your presentation was the following: being fair but firm with designers, contractors, and construction managers is the best way to establish respect with the construction team. Okay, you got into that a little in the first answer. It seems an obvious thing to say, and yet you thought enough to put it in here. Can you expand a little bit about how your experience has brought you to the point where you have to make it clear, have to be firm but fair, and perhaps tell us a little bit, give us a couple of examples of the ways in which you've applied that philosophy.
Sure. Well, I think having worked in the public sector in Massachusetts for 25 years, we've seen a wide range of designers and builders, and many of them are cooperative, and many of them, or some of them, are not as cooperative as others. And I think, the thing is it used to be you just try to, get out there and beat the contractor down and say, this is the way it's got to be. But at the end of the day is, you've got to work with the design team, come up with a fair set of documents, try to work together. And if you're all pulling along, I use the analogy, if the team's all pulling on the rope in the same direction, the owner benefits at the end. So you have, trying to understand, let the architect design, but work with them to put together a really good set of documents, and then work with the design or with the construction team to be sure that those documents reflect biddable scopes of work, that there are no gaps, and work together so that when there are gaps, which do occur, no set of drawings is perfect. I'm an architect, so I'll tell you, there's no perfect set of documents out there. And I think Matt and Dennis and Marwan will tell you the art of the construction phase that they deal with is dealing with what's in the written specification and what's in the scope of work that's trying to be installed by the tradespeople. So working together, that's the main thing. Is how we do that is, to me, how you get everyone working together. So you don't have to be out there pointing fingers and say, to the architect, you're wrong. I think I can tell you a couple stories of opportunities where Dennis actually helped the design team on one project realize that the product they had specified was not exactly the right application. But you don't make a big deal of it. You tell them, you talk to them, you sit down, you figure out, wow, we can do this better for the owner's benefit. And together they solve the problem without a lot of hoopla, and the owner benefited at the end, and the project, the application was right for the product, and everyone moved forward. So I think that's a good example of working together, in a professional way, but holding everyone accountable, and just, it's not always kind of what you say, it's how you say it. So I think that's it.
Good answer. Thank you, Tom.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. All right. I think we're on the fourth question. Have you worked on school projects that include grade reconfiguration? Please discuss the communication strategies that you would employ to galvanize public opinion for a project that would involve grade reconfiguration.
Okay. Well, the Beverly Middle School is a really good example of a grade reconfiguration project for a middle school. They spent a fair amount of time really getting out to the community to make a decision whether they were going to expand each of the neighborhood elementary schools, or due to the overcrowding, or whether they were going to pull them into the middle school. And so we spent a fair amount of time, and we know in the master plan, you've already done some preliminary work in that area to assess kind of the cost that it might be, which is very similar to what we did in Beverly, to make that determination. and do that with the public input so that they understand, there was a lot of strong feeling in Beverly that they wanted to maintain those neighborhood elementary schools that were walkable to certain, community groups in those areas. And so even though a 5 through 8 school is not typical in the Commonwealth, I have to give AI3 a lot of credit for the way they programmed this together to actually ended up being like a 5, 6, 7, 8 academy project. I'm probably sure you guys have seen it or know that project very well. But the way it was implemented really helped, because the community really is concerned about, there's a huge difference between a 5th grader and an 8th grader in terms of the not just emotional, but also maturity and everything else. So that there are a lot of parents go, I don't want my 5th grader with the 8th graders. So, but the way it's broken down and separated, it's like 2 different academies there. So I got to give the design team a lot of credit for how they put that together. But it really worked with helping support the city and the school department on the outreach side, so that we gave them good information on the cost, good information on the schedule, so that they can make the right decision for their community relative to the need to reconfigure, because that was a big issue within the town. Why should we do that? So, and again, our job is to help you make the right decisions for your community, get you the right information, and at the right stage to help you do that. So.
Okay. Have they been happy with the new middle school? In terms of the split, the 5 to 6 versus the 7 to 8.
My answer would be ecstatic, but I guess Dennis is the one who's been there most, and I think it's worked out very, very well for them. Dennis, I don't know if you have any initial comments that you've had from the principal there.
Yeah, all the feedback that I've received, and I'm still, as you know, Tom, going over there, checking on this and that occasionally. But all the feedback's been great. Everybody, right down to the, the custodial staff, I haven't heard really any issues. And, we thought there might be issues with, 2 separate cafeterias and, all the kids intermingling, but the way they have it separated with, the 7th and 8th and 5th and 6th, different floors and the neighborhoods, and everybody seems to really enjoy the whole situation. So
Good.
Really
Okay.
good.
Because, if you get this, you're going to see the same, types of issues here as you did in Beverly. We've already heard them, and those are some questions we certainly will have to answer.
Right.
Anything further on this one from anyone? All right. Let me ask you the last question, and you may have talked about this a little bit in some of your previous responses, but clearly, you regard the Beverly Middle School as a great recent success. Can you tell us how the project compares in purpose and scope to the Norwood project?
We also always, I don't know, sometimes we struggle to find, relevant and experience to projects. We're trying to say, well, it's kind of like it, but whatever. I'd say this one is probably as close to any project as we've had in terms of being, very similar, in terms of the 5th grade reconfiguration, the size. The communities are very similar in a lot of ways in terms of the diversity of the population within the town. Like I say, Marwan's doesn't speak very much, but he commuted from Norwood all the way up to Beverly for the high school project and for the middle school project. And so, I think the advantage we would have coming into this one is the fact that having him so close to this project. But
I used to have projects at Gloucester. That was a long ride. Beverly is a little bit shorter.
I've got one in Gloucester right now, and you can't get there from here. So it's,
right.
I get it. But anyway, we've told Marwan we'd given a best shot because he's traveled a lot over the years. So, I think the relevancy is, the fact that, we've gone through that project all the way through construction. And so we're at a place where we can actually take that knowledge and roll it back into the next one. And it's not just the design experience that the design team has, it's the facility management piece. It's how all the pieces went together. So I think, it's that, I think that experience, and like Dennis said, he's been 18 months out from occupancy or more, and he's learned a lot about the pieces of, how to get it up and running, and where, again, you want to get it running 99% efficiency when you're done, and it doesn't always happen that way, and there's always things that happen. But to be able to take that expertise and roll it into the early part of the design phase, I think would be huge. And I know AI3 has done the master plan, and they're a phenomenal firm. We had a great experience. I know Dennis and Marwan had a great experience working with them. They're probably put together the best construction documents of any architectural firm we've worked with in a while. So anyway.
They did a high school, by the way.
Yeah.
AI3, yeah. Any follow-ups from anyone on that? Any further questions from anybody, anybody in the subcommittee?
Just one thing, maybe, Mr. Chairman, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Ellis, you just looking at something, you talked quite a bit about Beverly. Maybe tell us a little bit about a couple of the other projects you've done. I'm thinking perhaps the Linfield project, or well, you're working on, you said Worcester South now, right?
Right. Yeah. Matt McCafferty and Marwan are working on that project. Matt, maybe you can talk a little bit about the Worcester South project. It's about halfway in construction, so yeah.
Yeah, we're about halfway through construction on the Worcester High School project, and what strikes me about our Worcester project and your Norwood project is that they have a lot of the same site characteristics. We talked about the road, the entrance, the abutters, the neighbors, and there's a very big parallel to that site and to this site. Although this site there's a lot more schools here. So we have a 360,000 square feet school we're building right now, and we're about halfway through. And this experience that we have right now in a CMO risk environment, I think will go a long way to help you solve your school project issues there. So I think it's a great larger sort of school. I'll give you an idea of the. We have a $209 million total budget. We have a $172 million construction budget here. We have many issues to deal with on a daily basis, and we work as a team with not only the PM but the designer to do the things that Tom mentioned earlier. So we're having a good experience. We hope we can roll into your town.
Right. Yeah. And you, Tom, you mentioned the Linfield Middle School. Actually, that was when we did.
It was a few schools, right? There was you oversaw what?
They were doing all 4 schools at the same time. A renovation of the high school, a new middle school, and ad renos for the 2 elementary schools. So that's actually the first time we worked with AI3 architects. And that middle school actually became a model school for them at that time through the MSBA. So, no, that was one where actually they had an existing middle school and they built a new one next to it and then tore the other one down. So, there were a fair amount of projects, but those are 4 projects going on concurrently. So I have to give the town of Linfield a lot of kudos, or sometimes they say it's a fine line between bravery and stupidity to do all your schools have all 4. That was before the MSBA made you pick one. But to do all those projects at the same time. But it was a successful project in many ways because of the team that was put together. So.
Okay. All right, we're getting close to the end. Tom, you or your team have any questions or like to make a final statement?
No, I just hope that you've reached out to our references. Specifically like. I don't know if Margot's had a chance to talk to Matt Pasta up at the principal in Beverly, or to the mayor or to the superintendent. But I think, the relationships we develop with our clients, I think says most of the things about us. It's not what you do, it's how you do it. You picked 3 really good firms. I don't think you could go wrong with any of them. I think the issue is, it's not just doing the basics. It's what's going to be a good fit for you. And I know we're up against an incumbent in a hometown team, but at the other time, we've got I think we've got a really good team here. we've got a lot of experience and can really help you come up with an extremely successful project. So we would be honored to work with you and look forward to you making a selection and hear if you have any other questions. So be happy to follow up.
Just so you know, I was able to conduct one interview. You know, it was tough to get a hold of people, unfortunately, and you got a excellent recommendation. So I'd just like you to know that.
Thank you. So
Anything further from anyone?
Thank you for the time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Why don't you just quickly introduce yourselves? We'll introduce us, and then at 4:15 you begin your presentation, so that doesn't cut into any of your time.
All right. So I'm Tim Bonfatti. I'm the principal of Compass Project Management. Why don't you guys introduce yourself?
I'm Brian Kelly, VP of the Construction Operations.
Ryan Jarvis, Project Director.
Chin Lin, and I'll be the project manager of the project.
Christopher Eberly, I'll be the construction site manager.
And Mary is the project accountant.
Okay. Well, I'm Allan Slater. I'm chairman of the Middle School Building Committee, and I'm also a member of the Finance Commission.
I'm Tom Maloney, member of the Norwood Board of Selectmen.
I'm Margot Frazek. I'm principal of the Coakley Middle School.
Paul Riccardi, Director of Buildings and Grounds.
Okay, we also have a town manager, Tony Mizuko. I just stepped away for a second.
Okay.
And
Tim, Kathy Carney here. You know me for agent,
Kathy.
administrator. Hi, how you doing, Mary? Brian,
Good,
right?
how are you?
Good, haven't talked in a while.
It has been. Everything good?
Everything's good. No more Peggy to help us out.
I bet you miss her.
We do.
yeah. All right, it's about 4:15, so turn it over to you.
Okay. So first of all, we want to thank the committee for inviting us. Obviously, we've targeted this project for several years since it's been in discussion in Norwood and something we followed. So we're very, very honored to have a chance to interview for it. So I think there's a number of reasons why Compass, but one of the primary ones is that we have been a reliable and trusted partner for the town for really 11 years ago, since 11 years ago when we started the Norwood High School project. Since that time, we finished 3 other projects in town, Department of Public Works, the Light Department most recently, and we also were involved in the town hall exterior restoration. So those projects were all done successfully, and as I say, we've been reliable for the past 11 years. We're local. Our office is in Norwood. Some of us are from Norwood and born and raised there. All of us live pretty much, well, most of us, Chin doesn't, but most of us live within 10 minutes. We know the town, we know what the vibe is, we know the geography of it, which I think is very important in these kinds of assignments. We are a credible and competent partner for the town in dealing with the MSBA. We've done dozens of MSBA projects. I think we're a leader in school construction in the MSBA program. I think that's important, not only in dealing with the MSBA, but also in working with the town, and particularly in the approval process when you're going to be asking the town for a significant amount of money to build the school. So we're only as good as our team, obviously, like any project management firm. And so myself as the principal and Brian Kelly as our vice president of operations, I'm very involved in the design phase in particular, and will be your lead contact during the design phase, and offer strategic advice and counsel around the project. As we move into construction, Brian takes on more of a role in that operation. Our project director, Brian Jarvis, was the project manager on the high school and obviously is our critical and key member of the team, and I'll let Brian bring you from here.
Again, my name is Brian Jarvis. I've been with Compass since the beginning. First project on Norwood High School, and been construction almost 20 years now. I was a big project manager on the DPW project and a director on the Norwood Light Department project. Other school experience: Norfolk County Agricultural High School, Marshfield High School, currently with Natick Middle School and the Walpole Middle School project. The Natick Middle School project, which is an AI3 project, similar to the high school, is set for completion this fall, and I think it could end up being a very similar project to the Coakley project if the Coakley project ends up on the existing site. Natick is a 3-phase project on the existing site within 15 feet of the existing building, so a lot of similarities if we end up on the same site. As project director, I will be the day-to-day leader for the project team. So that's the Compass team, the architect, our relationship with the owner, reps, and eventually the contractor. And then I will be a point of contact throughout the project from start to finish to provide that consistency. My job is to keep that team aligned with the big picture, and then moving forward and making sure that all the details get addressed along the way. And we do that by implementing our team plan execute strategy. What we mean by that is putting together the right team, the right stakeholders, and the right representatives who can deliver on a project. Putting together a sound and achievable plan that produces the right mix, quality, budget, and schedule for the town. And then executing on that plan, leading the effort, promoting team accountability to get the job done. And then finally, I'll lead the effort in what we like to call building a project ego, getting the team members to put aside their individual egos, their individual firm egos, and putting the best interest of the project first. At all times, deliver their best work, and deliver into those desired results in a collective fashion. With that, I'll turn it over to Chin, who'll talk a little bit more about his role.
Hi, I'm Chin, and I will be the project manager on the job. I am an architect, and then my role on the project is to make the train run on time. And prior to joining Compass, I have over 20 years of public school experience, and many of the projects I worked on were MSBA projects. I'm extremely familiar with the process. And currently, I'm working on the Westwood Hanlon Elementary School. And similar to the Coakley Middle School project, that it has multiple enrollment option, which translate to the reconfiguration or redistricting issue in Westwood is a redistricting potential. And then with your project, that with the reconfiguration, that it almost requires a parallel process of making sure that you have the selecting the site, but then also making sure that educationally the implication to the rest of the district, the other elementary schools, and then how you transition from the smaller elementary school to the larger middle school, etc. So that we need to build the support in that to get the in order to get the project passed. And I'll pass it to Chris.
I'm Chris Beverly. I'm a registered architect as well. I'm also a parent of an old elementary fourth grader. And I'm also a community member. I've coached soccer at the fields behind Coakley. I've coached hockey in Norwood for years. I was also first introduced to Compass as a member of the permanent building committee in Norwood. I worked with Compass at the tail end of the hall renovation. I worked through construction on the DPW with Brian. I also was in the bathhouse that was done over by Coakley, as well as participating in programming and design for the chapel before I left the board last year. As the site manager, I would be manager on site during the execute phase of the project, where I would work with the architect and the contractor and the construction, really identify and be proactive in getting at issues before they become problems. Currently, I'm working on an elementary school in Millis that's wrapping up. That was a very successful project. I'm also working with Chin on a systems renovation for UMass Dartmouth. As a member of the PVCC, I worked with Kathy Carney. I know I've presented to Tom before on town hall issues. And I think I have a reputation amongst the folks I've worked with for a while of being detail oriented and getting to the core of issues so that everybody can understand what the real problem is. And I think I would bring that to the team.
Okay.
I'd also have a student in Coakley during construction. So safety, statistics, if you're building next to the school, would really be something that's at the core of my heart.
Okay, thank you.
Mary Cuppins again. I've worked for Compass since Tim started the company as well. In fact, I participated in the interview for the Norwood High School project. In fact, still in my head, it will always be the new Norwood High School project, even though it's been quite a few years. As your project accountant, I will prepare the monthly vendor invoice packages for the building committee. The package includes all of the invoices each month, which your project manager will have reviewed and recommended for payment, as well as updated budget status reports each month. On behalf of the town, I will submit the project's MSBA budgets into the MSBA ProPay system, as well as all of your monthly requests for reimbursements. Compass is one of the only OPM firms that will completely handle the monthly reimbursement process with the MSBA. And this includes everything from entering all the project costs into ProPay, gathering town signatures, preparing, shipping the packages to the MSBA, and then finally reviewing the MSBA auditor's findings for possible reconsideration or resubmission that's been rejected. As of this morning, we've handled the reimbursement process for 35 different MSBA projects, resulting in more than $258 million in MSBA reimbursement to our clients.
Okay.
Thanks, Mary. So I'll quickly touch upon a few of the key aspects we think are important for the Coakley project. One being site selection. I know that there are several sites that could be feasible that the town has talked about, and there's several balls in play for that. What we would need to do is cast a wide net and make sure that we look at all those sites for the new school. We implement a transparent and thorough evaluation process to make sure that we've looked at all the options, and we've also documented that everything was explored and ultimately the right decision was made so that is on the project record. Grade consolidation, I know Chin touched on this. Obviously, moving the 5th grade into the middle school would have some benefits to the town. We'd have to look at how that would impact the middle school project from the size and cost perspective, obviously, and then long-term life cycle costs of the district. So interesting options there. And probably most importantly is the community support, especially from a financial perspective. I mean, going to a town meeting, asking for a large capital project is difficult in normal times, let alone in some of the crazy times that we're facing right now as far as budgets are concerned. But in order to do that, we need to have a team bring forth a sensible cost solution that's aligned with Norwood's tradition of nothing more, nothing less, something that the citizens can get behind on a lot of different levels. Putting in place a transparent and open process with the community, a lot of community involvement and participation. We do that with a strong community outreach program. We do a lot of public presentations. We'll meet with any group that needs to be met with in order to get project information out there, and then sharing that information in a timely and accurate manner, and that it's also clear that everyone understands exactly what's being decided upon and what needs to happen. And finally, why Compass? A couple of what we think are differentiators among other groups is we take a 360-degree approach to project management. And what we mean by that is that the project is more than just drawings in the construction site. It involves all the communities associated with the project, the school, the parents, the staff, the abutters, the neighborhood, and all the different people in town, and including the taxpayers. And we've had a lot of experience with those types of projects, starting with Norwood High School. It's an inclusive project. It's inside, outside the construction fence, and making sure that we're addressing any questions, issues, or concerns that those community groups might have. We also take a process-based approach to project management. We believe that projects are only as good as the processes that you put in place. We'll work closely with the building committee, the town, the school, to implement processes or tailor processes that make the most efficient and effective use of your time. Most of the people on this project are volunteers or have full-time jobs, and there's a lot of work to be done. So we know your time is limited and precious, so we'll do our best to make it as efficient as possible. And we want the project experience to be an excess. We'll take care of the technical aspects, but if we get to the end of the job and everyone says that was a painful, stressful experience building this building, then we failed. So we think that we do a good job of doing that and making it an enjoyable process. And we also strive to add value to the project. The term is owner's project manager, and we take that very seriously. The key word is manager. It's not owner's project reporter. It's just not pictures and monthly reports. We take an active, engaged role on a daily basis, designer selection through closeout, through moving in, to make sure that the project is successful. We strive to be out front, anticipate issues, help clear the way for the project team, and drive towards success. We also provide the owner with clear and timely information to make some of those critical decisions. And finally, I'll just leave you with, we have a proven track record of delivering successful projects, and more importantly, building strong client relationships. And I think that's evidenced by our repeat business with multiple clients. And we hope to continue that here in Norwood. With that, I'll turn it back over to Tim.
If I could, Tim, I've got some questions I'd like to ask. If you could.
Yep.
Let me start with the first question. Can you discuss the advantages of the CM at risk methodology over the design bid build approach and vice versa? And can you tell us if you have a preference for the Coakley project?
So our philosophy, and not all OPMs share this philosophy, but our philosophy is that every project needs to be decided on its own merits, whether it should use CM at risk versus design bid build. I was really have been involved. I was pretty much the technical draftsman of that legislation to give towns the ability to use CM at risk back in the early 2000s. I strongly believe in its benefits on the right project. But if you have a project that pretty much can be segmented on its own, and the details can be shown in the drawings, and you don't need a lot of pre-construction interactions with the client to talk about staging and phasing and different occupied environments, I'm not sure CM at risk would be worth the premium. We were looking at CM at risk on the high school project initially, and when it moved to a model school, we decided to go to design bid build because the job became, frankly, that much simpler, for lack of a better word, than it was when it was being custom designed. And so there's a premium to CM at risk, and if the benefits you're going to get don't justify that premium, we don't recommend it. So that's our basic. We can't tell you on this project because we don't know what the solution will be. If this were to be an ad reno of the Coakley, and I know that's not necessarily likely, but that is going to be an option we'll have to advance. We would probably look seriously at CM at risk because of that. If it's on its own greenfield site, it would be probably not a CM at risk project. If it's behind the Coakley or involved in some way and it's very interactive with it, it becomes more of a borderline call, and we would look at it. Roughly 30 to 40% of our projects are CM at risk, and the rest are design bid build.
Okay. Any other questions from anyone on that? Okay. Next question is, if you are selected as the OPM for this project, can you tell us how your view on how long you will be engaged with the town on the project? Essentially, when would your involvement and your responsibility end?
So I'll start that answer, and Brian can chime in. I mean, essentially, we view our relationship with clients to be never ending, in essence. I mean, on the high school, we've come back at a couple of times, and most recently a couple of years ago to work on an issue with the roof. We would never leave a client when we get called to come in to fix. We want to make sure that project, when we leave it, is working properly. But we also recognize that some things might come up over the next few years after it's occupied. So we would always be available to a client to fix an issue that occurs. Brian, you have any comments?
Yeah, I'll add to that. I mean, I touched upon it a little bit. I mean, we view it not necessarily as a contract, but as a client engagement, and we strive to build those client relationships. And as Tim mentioned, I mean, we're constantly in contact with clients that we've had, years ago that either are looking for advice on another project or have projects that are coming. And I think our track record shows that, we've done right by them, and they want us to come back and do other projects for them. But I know we've had conversations even on Norwood about some of the things they wanted to do on site in the landscaped areas, and they're asking for input and suggestions. So we value those relationships, and to us, the project might be over, but the client relationship goes on forever.
Okay. All right. Any follow-ups from anyone on that? Okay. Next question will be, one of the project objectives is sustainability, particularly any chips and lead. Please include examples of opportunities and strategies you would pursue for Norwood.
So again, and others can chip in on this, but you know, at a minimum, we would pursue the lead certification necessary to get the 2 points incentive, which typically is at this stage involves some elements of sustainability, and Chin in particular is very familiar with sustainable construction. We are looking at net zero energy projects on pretty much all our projects now. Not necessarily all the towns are willing to make that initial investment, but so we would look at the possibility of net zero, whether that's achieved by using photovoltaics or achieved by using geothermal. You know, though that is increasingly being, as the energy code increasingly gets more restrictive, we're finding that it's becoming more and more desirable for towns to look at net zero energy. So Chin, I don't know if you wanted to add to that, or Chris, both of you I know are pretty.
I will add some some of the approach that in terms of lead and chip and the sustainable processes, also wanting to make sure that it has educational benefit and improve the health and benefit for the occupants. For instance, in Westwood and in a few other schools, the strategy is to utilize what's called the displacement ventilation. And what it does is that it is the most effective system that it takes all the airborne particle out of the room and gets out of the building and never remix and then recirculate. So that if a kid sneezes, that it never gets shared by anybody else. And especially in today with the COVID world, that would be extremely beneficial. Now that system is no more expensive than plenty the other choices, and then that would be something that would be beneficial in terms of the health benefit for the school, and that so the decision making process will be much more. It will be a holistic conversation about, is there anything that we can is selection of the system be beneficial, not just on the sustainable side, but also on the educational side, in terms of acoustic. That's another major issue that that we would be paying attention to.
And I would just add to that within sustainability, everybody thinks of the health of the building and limiting waste, but there's also a major component of energy cost savings that come with a sustainable building. Building energy use is one of the biggest energy uses, and energy costs money. So in a town like Norwood that's constantly looking at its maintenance costs, building a building that has low energy use is going to have a ripple effect and free up money for other things.
Okay. Good. Anything further from anyone? Okay. Next question, and you touched on it a little bit in your presentation, but have you worked on school projects that include grade reconfiguration? Please discuss the communication strategies that you would employ to galvanize public opinion for a project that could involve grade reconfiguration.
So, and Chin will talk more about this, but we're working currently on, in Westwood, we're actually looking in Wellesley as well as projects dealing with consolidation and subsequent redistricting in those cases. You know, it's a very sensitive topic for most districts to look at. How do you change? And, you know, there are consultants that deal with it. In both cases, we're working with a consultant to sort of look at optimal travel times and how that would work. But it's a really much more emotional than it is analytical process. So I think to some extent, a lot of it is about being clear with the community that, you know, there's a lot of things being studied and it's not necessarily heading in one direction or another. And I think that the biggest fear that we see in communities is when there's a lack of communication to the public about the process you're looking at for redistricting. So Chin, I don't know if you want to add to that because you're working on that in Westwood.
Right. And in terms of whether the reconfiguration and redistricting, they are educational impact in terms of the educational delivery. And so in this kind of situation that we need to get the school committee fully involved and engaged so that you can determine, so you can have a uniform message going out there and then say, so that you can be able to present to the community that these issues are carefully thought through and it's an educationally based decision process. And then you look at the issues, and there are some issues that when you move the 5th grade out of the elementary school, you'll be leave behind some very small elementary school in terms of so you will go into a situation where the elementary school will be in the 200s, and then they will be graduating from 4th grade from there and then entering a 1,000 student school, middle school. And then there are issues such as you got tiny little 5th graders and you got 8th graders that are taller, they're full-grown adult. And then how do you manage to the process of making sure everyone is comfortable, and then so that we can talk to the educator to get there and then talk to the and get out in front of the community so that they understand how the decision-making process, and then we can make decisions that address some of the fear and concern so that it will be a smooth process.
Okay. All right. Anything further? Okay. Last question. Again, you alluded to this a little bit in your opening remarks. In your introductory letter, you urged the town to consider other sites for this project. Can you explain your reasoning for making this suggestion, and do you have any specific sites in mind?
Well, we make that suggestion because, first of all, it's good policy to be able to answer the community to say, you know, we looked everywhere and this is where we ended up, whatever that right decision is. You know, I know there are other potential sites in Norwood, maybe more central in the town, because as you all know, Norwood was developed as the junior high school south, and it's on the one end of the town. There are other sites that may be on the other end that might be in consideration. I think the point around the site selection process is that it's casting, as Brian pointed out, it's casting a wide net and looking at a lot of sites and putting them in an objective matrix. And we look at, when we do a site evaluation, and this happens at both, when we go from a sort of a long, wide list of candidates narrowing down to a shorter list, you know, we always try to make it an objective criteria. We want to look at the impacts of traffic and site planning, the overall community benefits, the overall disruption to education. For instance, the Coakley will have some level of disruption to, not disruption necessarily, but impact on education given its location. So I just think it's a good idea to look at a wide net of opportunities, you know, without getting more into this, to some of the planning. It's hard to sort of throw a dart at some, possibly the Pleasant Street site, you know, it has some possibility, but we'd have to look at the size of that. But I think that you'd look at a number of, you know, we need probably, depending on how many fields we use, we need somewhere between, you know, 6 and 10 acres of land to do a middle school, or 7 and 10 acres or something like that. The high school's on it. So we would want to look at, you know, a number of different varieties and put it into a process that funnels us down to the right selection. And Brian, I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Brian Jarvis.
Yeah, and I would just add to that is that you need to look at a couple sites, like Tim said, to kind of make sure you've checked all the boxes and at least, you know, looked under all the rocks that are a possibility, because you want to have the answer that you did look at sites for whatever reason. And also, some of the sites that might be obvious sometimes have, until you go through that process, have maybe limiting factors from a budget perspective. I mean, it's an open field, we can fit the building, but it's very poor circulation, the traffic's impacted, there's no room for green space or fields. Now we have an issue of how do we get those people to fields, what fields they use, et cetera. Or you have to recreate fields someplace else in town, which is now a budget issue. We're dealing with that in Walpole. I mean, the middle school, one of the middle school sites, there's beautiful ball fields, which is a big open space for a building, but now they need to recreate fields somewhere else. So you need to go through that process. And at the end of the day, that way, when you look back, several years from now, why decisions were made, everyone can say, well, we looked at that and this is why it didn't work out. So I don't think you want to rule anything out in the beginning. You want to get to that solution that everyone agrees is the right solution.
Okay. All right. Any follow-up or further questions from any of the subcommittee members?
No, I think that's fine. I think the answers were all thorough. I like the way you handed off to each other too and involved everybody. That was good.
Yeah. By the way, I hear you on sites. Part of my job used to be finding sites for wastewater treatment plants. So your job, I think, will be a little bit easier than that.
Those are so welcome everywhere you go right now. Everyone wants one of those in their neighborhood.
Many stories. All right. If there are no further questions from anybody in the subcommittee, Mr. Bonfatti, would you like to, or your group like to make a closing statement?
I would like to just say, and others can chip in if they want. Obviously, I think, as you know, Norwood is an important, as our first client, and for many of us, a very personal connection. This is a very personal project for us. And from my perspective, I went to the junior high south, so I know the school. The town gave us as Compass our start when it was the high school. It could have gone in a different direction, frankly, when that was being procured for OPM. So the level of flat out affection for dealing with this project is pretty strong within this whole team. And I think that, just from a personal standpoint, I think when it means a lot to us to get the contract. So I'll offer that, and others, if you wish to add in, please feel free.
I just thanks again for the opportunity. We're delighted to be back.
Okay.
I just would like to say that I'd love to be a part of this project. I think I brought a lot to Norwood when I was on the PBCC, and the opportunity to be integral in the construction of this and to make sure that it's my tax dollars if I'm the construction site guy. So I want to know that we're getting what the town needs and what the town is due with this project, and it's something that could be really successful for the town. So I'd really like to be a part of it.
I do want to point out, because it was mentioned, we've known each other. Brian, Jarvis, and Mary and I started Compass 11 years ago. Brian Kelly and I have been working together for 20 years. And we've known Chris, aside from professionally at Compass, but beyond that for probably 6 or 7 years. And Chin is really new to us, but as a team, we're very comfortable with each other, and we know each other. We know where we need to pick up when somebody needs it. And I think that's important, that you have a team that understands each other.
Okay. All right. With that, I'd like to thank you very much, and we'll be making a decision shortly, and that's it.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I've been with PMA since 1992. I'm an executive director heading up the OPM group in the Braintree office. With us today, I'll also let our other guys introduce themselves. Go ahead, Chad.
I'm Chad Crittenden, been with PMA for 13 years. I'm a managing director.
Sean?
Sean Burke, I've been with PMA for 15 years, senior director.
Walter?
Walter Hartley. I've been with PMA for 9 years, and I am a senior associate.
Tim Cheney?
Tim Cheney, I've been with PMA for 5 years, and I am also a senior associate.
And then
Mitch Miller, I've been with PMA a little over 2 months. Prior to that, I worked for a general contractor and engineering firm.
Okay. Why don't we start with our committee? I'm Allan Slater. I'm the chairman of the middle school building committee, and I'm also a member of the finance commission.
Tom Maloney, member of the Norwood Board of Selectmen, and probably the only one here who remembers the original Mitch Miller. So just having some fun with you, sir.
With all due respect, I do too, Tom.
So speaking from a later generation, I'm Margot Frazick, the principal of the Coakley Middle School. I hang out with 8th graders, so no, I don't know Mitch Miller.
Paul Riccardi, Director of Buildings and Grounds. I'm probably the oldest one on the school side, and I do remember Mitch Miller.
Okay, Tony, would you like to just introduce yourself?
Tony Mizuko, General Manager for the town of Norwood.
Okay. And Kathy? Kathy's our procurement manager. She just stepped out for a second. All right. Way we're going to do this, as we've done with the other ones, is that, make an introductory statement. Then we have a series of questions, about 5 questions to ask, and then we'll end it with any other questions we may have, and you can make some type of closing. So we expect this to last about a half hour or so. So with that, whenever you're ready, feel free.
Great. Well, again, thank you very much for having us, PMA Consultants. We do know you have 3 very good firms you're looking at. Just a little quick background. We know you have our proposals and all the history of PMA, but founded in 1971, PMA remains one of the, if not the longest running and most trusted independently owned project management firms nationally. We know that you have some other big name firms that are in the running, but locally here in Braintree, PMA believes we're the strongest OPM based on our proposed management team of Chad, Sean, Walt, Tim, and Mitch. We say that based on their actual job experience on K through 12 projects. Braintree locally has done over 40 school projects, 30 of which were full build projects. And of those 30 plus projects, this team has been responsible for 25 of those. So we have some very significant experience with K through 12 schools locally, and that is all Eastern Mass. So in the surrounding communities from the North Shore to the South Shore to the Cape, we have built a lot of schools. Our proposed team is also intended to provide redundancy in our staffing and our positions and knowledge. We'll be bringing Chad in as the lead of the project director. You'll have John Burke and Walter Hartley as lead PMs throughout the project from day 1 to day end. And you'll have Tim Chaney and Mitch Miller as the APMs working from day 1 to day end on the project, throughout the project and changing tasks throughout the phases. So PMA is always available to meet, to attend events, to receive calls, and to support the town of Norwood on the Coakley project. Chad?
Thank you, Chris. So we are tremendously excited to be part of this interview process. We appreciate everybody's time, especially in these trying times. So the way that we had structured this is to run through the 7 objectives identified within the RFS. We're going to spend our allocated time to focus on those. So the first RFS item noted was identification of community concerns that may impact options. Community concerns right now in the economic climate are probably first and foremost, and they're going to be, quite frankly, the biggest hurdle this project will face. PMA is prepared to tackle that. We've worked in many higher risk communities that community support for the project has been challenging initially, at least. We've actually walked into projects that have failed a number of times under prior OPM leadership and taken the project through a overwhelmingly successful passing vote. So early on in the project, we'll establish focus outreach groups. We'll make sure that those groups use social media as a tool. We'll organize community forums to obtain input from the community. Local presentations at local boards like school committee, FinCom, board of selectmen. And first and foremost, most importantly, is the process needs to be transparent from start to finish. PMA is prepared to bring that to the table. The second objective is identification of critical milestone dates, town votes and whatnot. So PMA does have in-house schedule experts, so we will manage this schedule in real time. We've taken projects from feasibility right through schematic design and MSBA board approval in as little as 13 months. So it can be done. MSBA allows you 30 months to complete that process, but we can certainly work within the town's schedule constraints for town meetings and town votes. The third objective identified is identification of alternate sites. So of course we will work to identify all the sites within the area, both public and private, that may accommodate that building and perform cost benefit analysis as necessary to evaluate the viability of the sites. I think another sort of on the same lines, vetting all the options. The model school options are something that should absolutely be looked at here. Norwood has had tremendous success with the model school program. There are currently 3 MSBA model middle schools that are pre-approved by the MSBA. Of those 3, PMA constructed 2 of the original buildings that later became models. The Shrewsbury Shorewood building and the Hudson Quinn Middle School are both options that would work with Norwood's proposed enrollment configuration. So they're there. Sean, I'll turn it over to you.
All right, thank you. So one of the other items you talked about is life cycle costs of the building. While it's important for us to look at the overall cost of a building, it's also it's important to figure out how much it's going to cost the town to run the building, maintain the building over the 50 to 75 year life of this building that we're going to put into place. And part of the objectives here is to make sure that we're putting in systems into the building that the town actually wants and needs. Certain towns have very sophisticated staff and they can manage very sophisticated systems. Some towns don't, and more or less we find that some janitors or custodians who've been working in the building for a long time get promoted to the building manager, and then they're asked to run a spaceship when you give them this new building instead of an old steam boiler or the electric heat system that you have in the Coakley. So we want to make sure that we're not giving you something you don't want, something you don't need and can't use, and that's going to cost you a lot of money to run, even if it means it's less expensive to start off with. So that's something we need to go through in detail with the design team to make sure that we get down what they want. One of the other items we talked about is leads and chip certifications. We have 100% success rate on all of our projects, certifying lead and getting the 2-point incentives, which would be lead silver or chips verified. It's required to be certified, but we always like to go the extra step because we find that you can get that 2% and it pays for itself. The one thing we want to make sure we make informed decisions, and in that we want to make sure we involve your sustainability commission early on to make sure that the needs of the town and the wants of the towns are included in the building. And the earlier we can get that into the project, the better, to make sure it's there from day one. And whatever the tenets are of that sustainability commission, we're putting those in the building. One of the other things we look at is net zero, and whether or not you want to be net zero. We've looked at it with different buildings, and it's becoming more and more popular. Part of the problem with that is getting rid of the reliance on fossil fuels, and then you're back into an electric heat system, which I think you've been for years trying to get away from. The newer heat pump systems are certainly more efficient, but it really has to go with the site, and if you can put geothermal wells, and then the expense. So something to consider, and something to consider early to decide whether the town has an appetite to spend the money early on. One of the other questions was about the CMR delivery method. We've done both. I think our projects are about 50-50 CMR and design bid build. And it really depends on the job. Sorry, I'm in a school and the lights are going off. See, it's a state right there. Lead, the lights shut off if you don't move around enough. But all of those things are now actually, a lot of the things that we used to put in as nice to haves, the motion sensors, the shutting off of outlets and things like that, are now stuff that is actually code required. So the code is catching up to the lead. And the one thing that we always caution towns to do is to not point chase. We don't want to just put things into a building to fulfill a goal and to fulfill a lead requirement. We want to put things into the building the towns want, the town needs, the things that we can, to help us to educate the students and things like that. But we got sidetracked. On the CMR delivery method, it depends on the project. If it's a new build on a new site, typically design bid build is the way to go. We find that it's much less costly. If you're doing an ad reno, you have a complicated site, you have a complicated phasing. CMR is sometimes leads to it, but we find that oftentimes the expense on some of these projects and the added cost for CMR, quite frankly, just isn't worth it. And sometimes you're better off just paying change orders or expecting to pay change orders, and it may actually come out cheaper than or less expensive than hiring a CM to start with. One of the things that we used to look at a lot with CMs is delivery of early packages. The CM process allows you to do early package a little more easily, but we've found most recently on our Wareham project, we were able to do early site work, early demo and abatement all through a design bid build project, which cut 4 months off of the schedule, and the project came in about 12 million under budget. So we want to look at all avenues, ways to decrease the schedule, get the building done faster, because the faster you can get the building in place, typically the less expensive it is. Anytime you can shrink a schedule down, you're saving money.
Okay.
I'll turn Walter to talk a little bit about possible grade reconfigurations.
I'll run through this very quickly. The last item on the RFS was the possible grade reconfiguration. PMA and this team in particular has significant experience with consolidation, grade reconfiguration, as well as redistricting. Our Carver School was an elementary school that brought two buildings into one building. Our Easton Early Elementary School is a pre-K through 2 school that is bringing 3 buildings that have been separate their entire existence into one building. Our Dennis Yarmouth Intermediate Middle School, which is probably the most similar option and population size, brings together 4 and 5 elementary and a 6 and 7 middle. So very similar. Same thing with Shrewsbury Beale School. It's a K-2 school being expanded to a K-4 to ease on some overpopulation of their other schools. Wareham, another school that's bringing 2 elementary schools into one. Somerville High School and Saugus High School also brought their middle schools into Saugus brought their middle schools into the high school, and Somerville was able to bring in some of their programs that were not in the building into that building. So this team specifically has worked on every single one of those projects or is working on them currently, and they'll be closing up soon. So just wanted to add that as well.
Okay, anything further?
No, we'll turn that back to you now. Thank you.
Okay. Going to read off some questions. Some of these things you've already to some extent alluded to, but you probably want to get into a little bit more detail. First question, again, this is CM at risk. Can you discuss the advantages of the CM at risk methodology over the design, bid, build approach and vice versa? And can you tell us if you would have a preference for the Coakley project?
I think on that, it really depends on the site selection. Once we get an architect on board, we're going to look at a bunch of different options, and depending on which option the town decides to go with, we'll have to make a determination on which is better, CM at risk or design, bid, build. If it's going to be an ad reno, if it's going to be multi-phasing, we're moving students around the building. A lot of times we find there is some benefit to having CM at risk because you get a little bit more control over the contractors and over the subcontractors. But I don't know that it's necessarily a slam dunk. So I think each of these is you have to take each on a case-by-case basis and then make a determination, and maybe as part of the selection is which way you would build each of the options that we've decided. I mean, we've had good experience both ways. We've had some rough experience with some CMRs. We've had some rough experience with design, bid, build, and I think on both ends we're able to hold their feet to the fire, hold their feet to the contract, and provide what is required of their contract. I don't have a personal preference either way until we hit the project, and then once we find out what the project is, we're going to have a strong preference on whether or not it should be a design, bid, build or a CMR. One of the other things to note is on a MSBA project, their system and their ProPay and their budgets are really all geared for design, bid, build. They'll admit this. Matt Conley, when you go to the MCPPO training, he'll tell you the reason it's it's hard to go through their budgeting system on a CMR project. It's because it's not designed that way. So we've got tools and systems that we've developed to help us with that. In that we have to shift money around cost codes. We're in a design, bid, build. You really don't have to do that. And the problem is once you start moving money around, it becomes sometimes difficult for the towns and the finance departments to track where all the money's going. So we spent a lot of work over the past couple of years bringing our systems up to speed to account for that. But it is certainly a challenge, and it is an increased challenge for districts to track the money and to make sense of the CM project through the MSBA's accounting system.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Anything further or any questions from anyone in the subcommittee? Okay.
I think, Sean, we could also add that all of PMA staff are trained on those systems, and inputting any budget into ProPay for the district. It is something that we train all of our project teams on to have the redundancy, as Chris spoke about. So ProPay is not an issue for this team. We've been working on it on all of our projects.
Okay.
We find it mutually beneficial for us to manage the MSBA system so that we know, we put it in, we know where the money is. If you have a question, you ask us and we'll tell you.
Okay. All right. Next question is, if you are selected as the OPM for this project, can you tell us your view on how long you would be engaged with the town on the project? Essentially, when would your involvement and responsibility end?
So PMA does not see the relationship ending with any of our projects following the completion of our contract, nor the MSBA closeout, which is roughly 10 months to 1 year after the building's opened. PMA has been in contact with buildings that have opened in 2010, 2011, 2013. As late as this week, Chad and myself received an email from one of our clients in East Somerville looking for information about lights that had been damaged or needed replacement, and we were able to dig up that information for him. So it's something that we pride ourselves on, and I think our repeat clientele, specifically with schools and towns and municipalities that are doing multiple projects, they look for PMA to be there for them at all times, and our phones are on at all times, and we're answering the call whenever the call comes in.
We like to say we are the first ones in and the last ones out on the project, and it definitely rings true. There's little doubt in my mind that 10, 15 years down the road, the same people that are working on that project will still be around with PMA. Our tenure is absolutely incredible. See some of that in this.
Okay. Any follow-up questions? Okay. One of the projects. Yeah.
I'm sorry, one thing, real quickly for anyone, you did mention repeat working with on a number of projects within the same town. I noticed 4 with Arlington, which is a bigger town, much bigger than Norwood, and can be kind of contentious. Can you talk real briefly, or talk as much as you want about working with the public in a town that is active and involved and being given enough confidence to come back repeatedly?
So I don't know that we have anyone from the Arlington project on this particular team, so I'll talk to Somerville, which is another one of our repeat clients. The city of Somerville, very similar, right next door, incredibly involved community. The dynamic there is probably a little more political atmosphere than we would even see in our City of Boston projects, which is another big repeat client. Somerville, when there are these community forums, the turnout is incredible. There's hundreds of people. Some of the smaller communities, you might be lucky to have 20 or 30 people, but in Somerville, it's very, very important that we are fully transparent, because there are literally thousands of eyes on every single move that's made from that project. If there is an issue, we hear about it in real time, right through the mayor's office, and we respond to it just as quickly as we heard about it. Somerville, I think the first project we did with them was the East Somerville Community School. That was Chris Walter and myself. Since then, we have done their high school project, which is at the time the largest MSBA project ever constructed at $256 million. It's a very complex phased occupied renovation, so you can imagine the amount of community engagement and even from staff and students that a project like that will bring in. It's also a major SE component, MSBA component. It's vocational, so there's new programs. As Walt alluded to, we merged in an alternative program that had 7th grade students into a 9 through 12 high school. So working with SE and MSBA to get through that process, along with the community stakeholders in Somerville, is certainly a testament to the capabilities of that team.
Mm-hmm. Chad, if I could add, you spoke to Somerville and that being the big city. Kind of right up the street from you guys is Easton, a project that Chad, Mitch, myself, and Chris are working on. And they are probably one of the most involved towns that we've ever been a part of. Chad and I have spent Saturdays and Sundays at the Easton NRT Festival, and probably talked to 200 to 300 people through 8 hours. Their community forums are attended on the same level as Somerville, and for being, a tenth of the size of that city, they are the same way. They want the answers as fast as they can get them, and PMA is there, at any point in the turn. Our business cards go out to the newspaper reporters for questions to make sure that, we want to make sure they have the best information, that there's no information that's incorrect going out. And again, I'll reiterate the transparency of that project in Somerville, Easton, all of our projects is something that we pride ourselves on, and they are actually, it's a key to success for all of those projects to get the vote through the town.
Okay, all right. Okay, next question is, one of the project objectives is sustainability, particularly any chips and lead. Please include examples of opportunities and strategies that you would pursue for Norwood.
Sure. So, like I said earlier on, we do this all the time. Every MSBA project is required to be LEED certified. I'm LEED AP, so I get a little more knowledge on the topic. But I think that the key is every town is different. And I worked on one project in Norwood, but I don't really have a sense of the town and the LEED requirements. And we don't want an architect telling you what you should have in your building. We want them informing you what's available, and then we want to give you the information so that you can make the right decisions for yourself. One example that we've had before is the gray water storage. When you take your rainwater, you filter it, and then you cycle it through the building. It looks great on paper. It's great. If you bring it over to a town who can't maintain that system, now you've just spent $500,000 on a system that no longer gets used. And we want to make sure you know what the cost of the items are. And if it's something you really want, we're going to push to get it in the building for you. But we don't want anyone telling you that this is what you have to have in a building. We want to inform you what is available out there. We don't want to fall into a point chasing trap where all we're doing is to, hey, we'll take a point here, we'll get a point here. We really want to build a building, and we want to fulfill the sustainability goals of the town. So I know you do have a sustainability commission in town, which is great. So we'd like to meet with them early to figure out what are the goals of that commission, so that when you start interviewing architects, you highlight that and highlight those concerns, and you reach out to the architect who is going to be designing the building, and typically they hire a LEED consultant through them to aid them in this. We want to make sure you're hiring the architect that is aligned with your goals for LEED requirements for the building. Some of the other strategies we use is, certain times because of MSBA grants and fundings, you can't put, say, photo arrays on top of the building because they're going to take back your grant if you do that. So we build the building photo array ready. So after the MSBA process is over and after they close out, you can either purchase them or enter into a third-party purchase agreement, but your building is set up for it. And setting up for future success and setting up for future sustainability is something that's important. So even if you can't afford it at the time, at least you're not doing major renovations in order to put those things in the future.
Mm-hmm. I'm curious, we said that Planet MSBA doesn't pay for photovoltaic?
No, they're getting more open to letting you put on photovoltaic, but there was instances in the past where if a photovoltaic company came in and gave you a grant or gave you something for your building, the MSBA not only wouldn't pay for it, they would take it off your grant. So we're very sensitive to the MSBA process. And part of our goal here is to get any district that we work for as much reimbursement from the MSBA as possible. So there's a lot of strategies and ways to do that, but we don't want them to take money back just because somebody else gave you money. And some of the ways you do that is to set up your building and defer some of those items till later on. But we want to, the other thing is assuring the people in the town that those things are actually going to be done. So, it's great to say, hey, we're going to set up the building for a photo array, but do they believe you, or do they think it's just lip service to push something through? So it goes back to reaching out, community outreach, making sure that the community is involved, making sure that nobody on the day of the vote is saying, what are we voting on here? We have never even heard of this. I didn't know they were building a building. And, because you are going to need to get, I assume that you're going to have to do an override for the building. I'm not really sure, but that's typically common. And if you are, we need to get we need to get the people who are on the fence involved. You're going to have people that are going to vote against this no matter what. You're going to have people that are going to vote for it no matter what. But it's those people in the middle that we have to sway. And sometimes the easiest way to do that is just to make them feel involved and make them feel like their voice is heard and make them feel like the building that we're building is the right building for the town and that it's needed. And I think we've done pretty well in our past experience getting those things done and getting votes passed.
Okay.
Mr.
All right.
Chairman?
Yeah.
Just quickly, Mr. Burke, you mentioned working on another project in Norwood. That was the Callahan boiler system under the accelerated program. Isn't that correct?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Hey, thank you. All right. The next question, and again, you've alluded to some of this in some of your previous responses, but have you worked on school projects that include grade reconfiguration? Please discuss the communication strategies that you would employ to galvanize public opinion for a project that would involve grade reconfiguration.
Absolutely. So earlier during the introductions, I kind of spoke about the projects where, you know, the consolidation, reconfiguration, or redistricting were taking place on PMA projects. I would say that the two most relevant projects would be the Easton Elementary School project and the Dennis Yarmouth Intermediate Middle School. Easton pertaining to the point that it was 3 small schools going into 1 large school. You know, your grade consolidation authorizations from the MSBA bring this all, up over a little bit over 1,000, you know, where the school's a lot smaller at that point in time. The conversations that we had in Easton were, how do we make that building, which is going to house over 1,000 students, feel welcoming to kids that are under the age of 6 or tiny, and how they approach that building. So that's something that'll have to be looked at with the school committee, with the building committee, with the focus groups that we're going to have, with the outreach groups that we're going to have. But, you know, to get into the Dennis Yarmouth version, you know, they went with the school within a school model. So they're able to separate the 4 and the 5 and the 6 and the 7, something that, you know, maybe it's not right for Norwood, maybe it is. But it's something that could be considered to, you know, differentiate the students a little bit, and specifically that age group that, you know, is so different from, you know, 9 and 10 to 11, 12, 13. It is quite the difference in students and what they're going through. So it's a challenge. It's something that, you know, when we are helping you guys go through architect selection, that it's probably something that you guys are going to want in that RFS, you know, their experience with how to bring students together, how to make that building feel comfortable for everyone in it. And then bringing that to the community and making sure people's concerns are heard, making sure that their voices are heard. Like Sean said, it goes back to that transparency and being available to the public to assure them that the people that need to be looking at this, the teachers, the parents, and the town, it needs to be the right decision for Norwood, and it needs to make sense for the town, you know, both financially, economically, but also, you know, for the long-term goals of the town and the school district as well.
One of the things we also have to look at with the grade configuration is the schedule of the building. A lot of the times we like to open buildings on, you know, September 1, you're open for the next school year, but sometimes it just doesn't work out. The way the design schedule works out, the way the vote schedule works out, and the way everything lays out, sometimes you don't open the building in September. Sometimes it's a January opening, you open in winter break, sometimes it's a February break, and sometimes it's April. So we've done all of those. But the one thing to remember and be careful of, no matter who you choose, is if you're reconfiguring and you're pulling students from another building into a new building, a lot of times the classroom counts don't quite align. So you got to be careful about, you know, if you're bringing in new grades, you're going to typically finish out the school year in one school and then bring them in. So you might have a partially occupied building. If you're bringing in schools and then demolishing them, it becomes much more challenging of how do I build a school and then bring those students into here, reconfigure the classrooms mid-year, and then knock down a building. So there's a lot of nuances to the grade reconfiguration from the actual physical building beyond just with, you know, what's going on the piece of paper that says, yeah, we're going to add 7 and 8, no big deal.
Okay.
So there's a lot of stuff to look at.
Okay, good. Last question we have is, you include the Quinn Middle School in Hudson as an example of problem solving. Can you tell us how you worked with this site that required so much blasting?
So that's an instance of where we had an early package. We had identified that there was a high degree of ledge on the site that needed to be blasted. And we were able to put out an early package as a GC to get the blasting done and prepare the whole building pad prior to bringing on the GC for the Hudson School. It created the opportunity to get the basic ground site work enabling done early, while the balance of the design for the school continued. So it's a true schedule saver, and big picture, it was just a coordination between two separate GC contracts.
I think that Hudson project is another tremendous example of the benefit of the CM at risk delivery method that can actually be still derived from a DBB delivery, as long as you have an effective OPM and design managing the process. So Quinn was a number of years ago. Right now, we're doing the same exact thing on that Wareham project. Those early 2 bid packages, 4 months in schedule and $12 million on the bid number. So it's definitely effective, and I would say it's certainly a very good opportunity to the CM at risk delivery method that comes with its own premiums.
Okay. So that was, so it said that was a CM at risk. Okay. All right. Good.
Hudson was a, I'm sorry, Hudson was a GC. So
was it GC? Okay.
Was a GC. We undertook 2 separate contracts as a GC, but as Chad mentioned, we were able to do it as an OPM, similar to how a CM would do it.
Ah, okay. Misunderstood.
It's a careful coordination. Yeah.
Good. All right. Good. Any further questions from the committee? With that, Chris, if you have any final comments you'd like to make?
I had one question. The Coakley has had some roof work done and some windows done in the 2005, 2008. Were those done under the MSBA?
Do you know, Paul?
No, it's Kathy. I don't believe that they were done through the MSBA.
Okay, which is good news. Then you won't be, the MSBA would be seeking to recapture some of the funds that they spent on those projects if you took the school out of utilization early. So,
okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Tom?
No, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt, Chris. I just one thing. I just wanted to mention real quickly. I think Mr. Burke or somebody mentioned talking about getting the community behind the project, and there probably will be a need for an override. But the school per se, the existing school per se, is not held. There's not a lot, there won't be a lot of sentimentality about its raising. So what is worth. The cost might be an issue, the site selection will be an issue, I suppose, but the fact that the Coakley will no longer be there as people knew it will not be an issue. Sorry to interrupt you, Mr. Carroll.
One last challenge.
Okay. Anything else?
Sure. Do you want me to do a closing, or?
If you'd like, sure.
Sure. So again, thank you very much for having PMA today. We know that we're up against an incumbent as well as another highly qualified firm. So we sincerely hope the town picks their best OPM for your project, no question. From PMA's perspective, we rely on our past performance, our client satisfaction to support our business, keep our business going. Obviously, we've been successful with that locally here in Braintree with over 40 projects under our belt. Done by this group and some of our other OPMs in Braintree under the PMA name and company, not through other firms or other subsidiaries. Most importantly, we ask that you guys take a look at the actual staff that we're presenting to you, their qualifications, the schools that they've worked on, and how they match up to your Coakley school. And again, we sincerely appreciate the opportunity today, and you know, again, we sincerely hope the best for your project and that you pick the best OPM. And then Chad, I don't know if you had anything to throw in there as well.
That's it, Chris. Thank you very much for the opportunity, and it's very nice to meet you all.
Okay, thank you. Anything further? Okay. Well, thank you very much for making a decision shortly.
Thank you.
Inform you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care. All right. Do we have Paul with us?
Yes, you do.
Okay, all right. All right, I think, we have 3 outstanding candidates. Should we take about 10 minutes, compile our votes, and then we get back together? Seem reasonable?
It certainly does, unless you wanted to have everyone compile their results and have a separate meeting where we would decide. I don't know if we're allowed to do that, but 3 hours of interviews, I usually like to take time unless everyone wants to take 10 minutes and go from there.
Pleasure of the committee.
Well, Mr. Chairman, just a question. What is the, or maybe Kathy, it's for you. What is the, tell us again about the time constraints we have here. I'm kind of with Tony. If I had, I'd be happy to get back together this evening or something if you wish, but I'd like to go through my notes, not just the scoring, but you tell me if we're up against time, then we'll get it done promptly.
Right now, the way it's going is we had told MSBA that we would hope to start to negotiate with the selected respondents beginning now or sometime this week. We need to get our final selection to the MSBA no later than June 15th. And that includes the package, I believe, Alan, right? That we have to have together at that time. So that gives us roughly, 12 days to make the selection, negotiate with the company, and then get all of our paperwork into the MSBA. So we have time, but we don't have a lot of time.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, I think, Kathy, if we scheduled another meeting and then we tried to negotiate, put the package together, I don't know whether we'd have enough time to do that.
Yeah, it will be pretty tight. I don't know how much time. It's up to the committee what you want to do. As long as we meet the deadline of June 15th, so that roughly that's going to give us really, a week and a little bit in order to negotiate and get the paperwork out.
Go ahead.
No, I'm just saying, can we rank order? The point value was 100. Can we rank order how we all felt about the different companies? Who's our first, second, and third?
I'd be prepared to do that. I could do it.
I think the way that we've been looking at doing this was indeed getting each of the committee members to give us the total points for each of the firms that came in, putting that together, then doing an average and adding the average points to the average points that came together for the RFS itself. And then that will give us the ranking.
Do we have to do all that? Is that required?
Yes.
This is what we told MSBA that we would do in the RFS that they approved.
Okay. All right. Very good.
If we did delay just a little bit, what if we had a meeting on Monday? We've gone through the packages. We know we've all read a couple hundred documents. We've just sat through, 2.5 hours of interviews. We can score things and make a day of it, but it is a big decision. This is a firm we're going to be paying a large sum of money, and we're going to be relying on them to manage the largest capital improvement project in the town's history. I don't mind waiting until Monday, and then that only gives us a week to negotiate, but I think we can settle that within a few days and be done by next Thursday, Friday, and then get everything to the MSBA.
I do think that is doable. We'd have to get the meeting posted tomorrow in order to have a meeting on Monday, and then don't forget Monday is also the election day. So there's going to be a lot going on that day as well.
If we do it on Monday, it would have to be early afternoon for me.
Would you rather meet Friday? Tony, can you be ready Friday?
Yes, we don't have enough time to post a meeting for Friday.
Oh, right.
Unless we did a 7 p.m. Friday meeting. We did have a FinCom meeting on a Friday evening once. It was actually one of the better meetings we've ever had, but
I can't do Friday.
We can go anywhere Friday night, but
if we don't want to make a decision today, we'll have to do it on Monday, and we're just gonna have to compress what we have to do because we have to have a complete package, which is not, a 2-paragraph letter to MSBA by Monday, the 15th, which includes, some certifications by Kathy. Tony, I know, is going to have to sign something or whatever. So if people think that they can do this, if you'd rather wait until Monday, would 1 o'clock Monday be okay to meet and make a decision?
So, Kathy, do they want hard copy, or can you electronically send this to them?
I believe that they'll take it electronically, Alan. Is that what they were saying? That's how we've been sending all of our other paperwork electronically.
Yeah, we could. Yeah.
I just don't want to wait till just on the 15th to get it there. We want to make sure that we have plenty of time to get it, but I think Monday is very doable.
Do we have pleasure of the committee?
I'm good with Monday at 1.
Excuse me? Tom? You have something to say?
Monday at 1, did you say?
Yeah. Is that, again, would somebody, if that's the pleasure of the committee, would somebody make a motion?
Oh, so moved.
Second.
Motion made and seconded that we meet at 1 o'clock on Monday as a go-to meeting. Let me poll the committee. Tony?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
Margot?
Aye.
Paul?
Aye.
Chairman votes yes. We will meet 1 o'clock Monday to review the compile our points and make a preliminary decision. So we will get that posted tomorrow.
And so in the meantime, Mr. Chairman, do we get our score sheets to Kathy? Is that what you want, Kathy?
Yeah, if you have them, yes.
Okay.
Let's put it this way, when you have them, yes, I'll take them.
Okay. All right, that's what we will do then. If people don't feel comfortable with making a decision today, we will do that on Monday. That just compresses the schedule a little bit, but we'll try to do some work in the meantime and start to put the package together. All right. With that, any further discussions or points people would like to bring up? Hearing none, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? No. Sorry about that.